The fork trembled in my hand when I saw Stefan walk through the restaurant door. 6 months. 6 months of therapy, of rebuilding every shattered piece of myself, of learning how to laugh again without flinching at sudden movements. 6 months of sleeping without nightmares, of looking in the mirror and not seeing the worthless woman Stefan had told me I was. 6 months since the last time he'd grabbed my wrist so hard it left fingerprint bruises that lasted for 2 weeks. And now he was here at Marcello's, Boston's most elegant Italian restaurant, with some blonde woman on his arm and that charming smile I'd once believed meant love, but now recognized as a weapon. My breath stuttered when Stefan's eyes found mine across the candlelit dining room. His smile widened, the smile of someone who'd spotted wounded prey. He said something to the blonde, who nodded and headed toward the bar, and then Stefan began walking directly toward my table. Each step echoed in my chest like a countdown to detonation. I knew that walk. Knew the way he rolled his shoulders, the tilt of his head that meant he was about to say something cruel disguised as concern. He was coming to humiliate me, to remind me I'd never be good enough, to destroy the first night in months I'd felt brave enough to leave my apartment. Panic seized me like ice water flooding my veins. I couldn't let him reach me, couldn't hear his voice again, that voice that whispered poison and called it love. My eyes swept the restaurant desperately, searching for an exit, a distraction, anything. That's when I saw him, Frederick Cattaneo, Damon's father, the mafia boss, the man who danced with me just last night at his charity gala, the man whose dark eyes had burned into mine when he'd whispered, "Tell me more about how obscenely hot you think I am." He was dining alone at the corner table, expensive charcoal suit, dark hair pulled back in that signature bun, cutting into his steak with precise, controlled movements. He hadn't noticed me yet, completely unaware of my unraveling panic. Stefan was only 4 tables away now. I didn't think. There was no time to think. I stood so abruptly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor, grabbed my clutch with shaking hands, and crossed the space between tables on legs that threatened to buckle. Frederick looked up when my shadow fell across his table, and I watched recognition flash in those dangerous dark eyes, followed immediately by concern when he saw my face. But I'd already committed. Before courage could fail me, before logic could intervene, I leaned down and pressed my lips against his. The world stopped. Frederick went completely still beneath my touch for one heart-stopping second, and I whispered against his mouth, voice breaking with genuine desperation, "Please, my ex, please pretend." I felt his entire body change, muscles coiling tight, dangerous energy thrumming beneath his skin. When I pulled back just enough to see his face, something predatory and possessive flickered in those bottomless dark eyes. The concern vanished. The hunter emerged. Frederick smiled, not kind, not gentle, but the smile of a man who'd just been given permission to claim something he'd already decided he wanted. He stood in one fluid motion, and I was reminded exactly how much space he commanded, how completely he could surround me. His arm wrapped around my waist before I could blink, pulling me against his body with possessive certainty. His thumb stroked my hip, slow, deliberate, marking territory, and the gesture felt practiced, permanent, like he'd been waiting for an excuse to touch me since last night. "Tesoro," his voice was low, dangerous velvet with a steel edge. "Who's interrupting our dinner?" He was looking over my head now, and I turned to see Stefan standing frozen 3 steps away, his expression transformed into something I'd never seen before. Fear, because Stefan recognized Frederick Cattaneo. Everyone in Boston knew that face, that reputation, and the way Frederick was holding me, possessive, protective, absolutely lethal, left no room for misinterpretation. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up using a mafia boss as my shield, how one desperate kiss would spiral into an obsession neither of us could control, you need to know how this started. If you're already loving Rose and Frederick, tap the like button right now. This story gets messy, it gets dark, and it gets very spicy. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a second of the obsession. Now, let's rewind. 24 hours earlier, the phone screen lit up my face in the dim corner of the gala ballroom. I was hiding behind a marble column, thumbs flying across the screen, venting to the only person I trusted, my best friend, Damon. I typed furiously, "Your dad is obscenely hot." Like obscenely. That low voice, the bun, the tattoos. I'm going to combust. Send help. My thumb hovered. I hit send. I let out a breath, waiting for Damon's reply, waiting for the laughing emoji, waiting for him to tell me I was gross for lusting after his father. Instead, a notification pinged, not from my phone, from 20 feet away. I froze. Slowly, with a sense of impending doom, I looked at my screen. Delivered to Frederick Cattaneo. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. I looked up. Frederick Cattaneo, the man I had just objectified in writing, pulled his phone from his pocket. He read it. He paused. And then he looked right at me. My phone buzzed in my trembling hand. "Don't move. I'm coming to you." I looked up. My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat, and found Frederick Cattaneo's dark eyes already locked on mine across the crowd. He was moving toward me with the deliberate stride of a predator, and the dangerous curve of his mouth told me he'd read every single word. "I'm Rose Chen. I've been Damon Cattaneo's best friend for 5 years, and until 20 seconds ago, I'd successfully avoided any meaningful interaction with his intimidating, gorgeous, completely off-limits father. That was about to change. I had approximately 3 seconds to consider my options. I could run, push through the crowd, abandon Damon, fake a sudden illness, and never show my face at another Cattaneo event again. I could hide behind one of the marble columns and pray Frederick Cattaneo would graciously pretend this never happened. Or I could stand here like an idiot and face the consequences of my catastrophically poor texting skills. Option 3 won by default because my legs had apparently forgotten how to function. Frederick cut through the crowd like it didn't exist, and I watched every single step with the kind of horrible fascination usually reserved for oncoming disasters you can't look away from. The crowd parted for him instinctively, not because they were being polite, but because men like Frederick Cattaneo commanded space without asking. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. "Miss Chen," his voice was exactly as devastating up close as I'd described in that cursed text, low, smooth, with just enough Italian accent threading through it to make my name sound like something intimate. "I received your message." My face was on fire, actual literal fire. "Mr. Cattaneo, I'm so sorry. That was meant for my son?" One dark eyebrow arched, and the corner of his mouth curved into something that absolutely was not a polite smile. It was predatory, amused, dangerous. Yes, I gathered that. But since I'm the one who received it, I think we should discuss it. Properly. I clutched my champagne glass like it was a life preserver. There's really nothing to discuss. It was a joke. A stupid, inappropriate joke that I deeply regret. Do you? He stepped closer, and I suddenly understood what it felt like to be hunted. Regret it? Yes, obviously. Completely interesting. His gaze traveled slowly from my face down to my ridiculous red dress and back up, taking his time, making sure I knew he was looking. Because you were very specific. The low voice. He dropped his tone even further, and I felt it somewhere behind my ribcage. The bun, the tattoos. He rolled up one sleeve just enough to reveal dark ink curling around his forearm. "Tell me more about how obscenely hot you think I am. I want specifics." I nearly choked on air. "I can't. I'm not going to." "Why not?" He was enjoying this. Actually enjoying my mortification, and somehow that made it worse and better simultaneously. "You were bold enough to put it in writing. Surely you can elaborate in person." "That was an accident." "Accidents reveal truth, Rose." The way he said my name, no Miss Chen now, just Rose, familiar and possessive, made my stomach flip. "May I ask you something?" I nodded because coherent words seemed beyond my current capabilities. "Were you lying? What, in your text? Were you lying?" His dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me forget we were surrounded by Boston's elite. "Do you actually think I'm attractive, or were you making fun of me?" The question caught me completely off guard because it sounded almost vulnerable, which was insane because Frederick Cattaneo was many things, powerful, dangerous, intimidating, but vulnerable wasn't on that list. "I wasn't lying," I admitted quietly. The smile that crossed his face was absolutely wolfish. "Then dance with me. I should really find Damon. Damon is busy with investors. Dance with me, Rose." It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't quite a request either. Frederick offered his hand, and I stared at it like it might bite. Taking his hand felt significant, like crossing a line I couldn't uncross, But refusing felt impossible when he was looking at me like that, like he'd already decided I was going to say yes and was just waiting for me to catch up. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine immediately, warm and sure, and he led me onto the dance floor with the kind of confidence that came from owning every room you walked into. The orchestra was playing something slow and classical, and when Frederick pulled me into position, his hands settled on my waist with unmistakable possessiveness. "You're nervous." It wasn't a question. "Your hand is on my waist, and we're dancing in front of half of Boston. Of course I'm nervous. Why?" He pulled me closer, eliminating the polite distance that should have existed between us. "It's just a dance. It's not just anything when it comes to you." The words slipped out before I could stop them. His eyes darkened with interest. "And what is it then?" "Dangerous, thrilling, wrong. Complicated, I like complicated. We moved together effortlessly, despite the fact that I was absolutely not an experienced ballroom dancer." Frederick led with the kind of control that made following instinctive. "You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who laughs this genuinely doesn't usually survive in my world. But you're stronger than you look, aren't you, Rose? I can see it underneath all that light you project. The steel beneath the softness." The observation hit somewhere deep and true, and I stumbled slightly. Frederick's hand tightened on my waist, steadying me, his thumb stroking once against my hip in a gesture that felt deliberate. "How did you—" I started, but didn't know how to finish. "How did you see that? How did you know?" "I'm very good at reading people. It's kept me alive." His expression shifted, became almost gentle. "Damon mentioned you'd been through something difficult. I'm glad you survived it." The sincerity in his voice made my throat tight. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. Survival is always a choice, and you made the right one." Before I could respond, Frederick's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket with clear irritation, glanced at the screen, and swore softly in Italian. "I have to take this. Business." He looked genuinely frustrated. "Stay here, Rose. We're not finished." The command in his voice made my stomach flip again, and he was gone before I could point out that he couldn't just order me around. Except apparently he could, because my feet refused to move. The ballroom suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too everything. I needed air. The balcony doors were open across the room, and I made my escape before Frederick could return and pin me with those dark eyes again. The night air was blessedly cool against my overheated skin. I pressed my hands against the marble railing and tried to remember how to breathe normally. "There you are," Damon's voice came from behind me, and I turned to find him stepping onto the balcony. "I've been looking for you. Sorry, I just needed a minute." I smiled, falling back into the easy comfort of our friendship. "Gala exhaustion, yeah." He moved to stand beside me, his expression oddly serious. "Rose, I wanted to tell you something earlier. The real reason I invited you tonight." He looked nervous, which was strange because Damon was never nervous around me. We'd been best friends for 5 years. We'd seen each other through breakups and bad haircuts and 3 a.m. panic attacks. Nothing made us nervous anymore, okay? I prompted when he didn't continue. He ran a hand through his hair. "I need you to know that you're important to me. More important than—" "Damon!" Frederick's voice cut through the moment like a knife, and we both turned to find him standing in the balcony doorway. "The mayor needs to speak with you. Something about the permits for the new development." Damon's jaw tightened with visible frustration. "Now? Apparently it's urgent." Frederick's tone was bland, but when his eyes met mine over Damon's shoulder, I saw that predatory gleam again. Damon looked between us, clearly torn. "Rose, don't leave without me, okay? What I need to tell you, it's important, of course. I'll be right here." He squeezed my shoulder once before disappearing inside, leaving me alone on the balcony with his father. Frederick moved to where Damon had been standing, but closer. Much closer. "What was my son about to tell you?" "I don't know. He seemed off tonight." "And what about you?" Frederick's hand came to rest on the railing beside mine, close enough that I could feel his body heat. "Are you off tonight, too?" "I accidentally sent you a mortifying text. I think I've earned being off." His laugh was low and genuine. "About that message, we should address it properly. I thought we were pretending it never happened." I changed my mind. He shifted, angling his body toward mine, and suddenly the balcony felt very small. You said I was obscenely hot. That implies you've been thinking about me. That was just what, Rose? His hand moved from the railing to my waist, thumb brushing against the fabric of my dress in a touch that felt both casual and intentional. An observation? Or something more? His eyes had that hunter's gleam I'd noticed on the dance floor, except now there was no crowd, no music, nothing but him looking at me like I was something he'd decided he wanted. Mr. Cattaneo. Frederick, his voice dropped lower. Say my name, Frederick. I could barely breathe. This is dangerous? He leaned in slightly, and I caught that woodsy cologne again. Yes. Wrong? Probably. But I don't particularly care. Do you? That's not what I asked. Before I could answer, before I could even figure out what my answer was. Footsteps sounded behind us. Rose? Damon appeared in the doorway again, and Frederick didn't step back, didn't remove his hand from my waist, just turned his head slightly to acknowledge his son while keeping me exactly where I was. Are you ready to go? It's late. Yes, I said quickly, stepping away from Frederick and hating how flustered I sounded. I should probably... Already? Frederick's tone was light, conversational, but his eyes were still locked on mine. The night's just getting interesting. She has work early tomorrow, Dad Damon said, tension clear in his voice. Then I suppose I'll have to continue this conversation another time. Frederick finally looked at his son, and something passed between them that I couldn't quite read. Miss Chen, thank you for the enlightening evening. The way he said enlightening made my entire body respond in ways I absolutely wasn't going to analyze right now. Damon was quiet during the drive to my apartment, his hands tight on the steering wheel, and I knew him well enough to recognize when he was working through something in his head. Everything okay? I asked finally. Yeah. Just tired. Long night. What were you going to tell me? On the balcony? He was quiet for a long moment. It can wait. Actually, are you free for dinner tomorrow? I really need to talk to you. Of course. Everything okay? Yeah. Just something important. He pulled up to my building, and I kissed his cheek goodnight the way I always did, completely oblivious to the tension in his shoulders or the way he watched me walk inside. I was too busy replaying Frederick Cattaneo's voice in my head, the way his thumb had stroked my waist, the predatory promise in his eyes when he'd said we weren't finished. Whatever Damon wanted to tell me tomorrow at dinner could wait. Tonight, I had bigger problems, like why I couldn't stop thinking about my best friend's father. The next day, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the industrial mixer usually calmed me. Not today. Today, every time I slammed the dough against the stainless steel counter, my mind flashed back to the gala. Thump. Frederick's hand on my waist. Thump. His thumb grazing my hip. Thump. We're not finished. By the time I got home to get ready for dinner with Damon, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined the entire thing. The intensity, the chemistry, the predatory way he'd looked at me. All of it was probably just champagne and gala lighting playing tricks. I chose a simple black dress that hit just above the knee, applied minimal makeup, and arrived at Marcello's 15 minutes early because punctuality was one of the few things Stefan hadn't managed to ruin about my personality. The restaurant was everything elegant. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Damon had insisted on paying when he'd made the reservation, which should have been my first clue this wasn't just a casual dinner, but I was oblivious. Completely, catastrophically oblivious. Damon arrived exactly on time, wearing a button-down that meant he'd made an effort, and his smile was tight around the edges in a way I should have noticed but didn't. You look beautiful, he said, kissing my cheek. You clean up okay yourself. I grinned, settling into the comfortable rhythm of our friendship. So what's this important thing you need to talk about? Did you finally decide to quit the family business and become a professional Netflix critic like I've been suggesting? He laughed, but it sounded strained. Not quite. The waiter appeared with menus and wine recommendations, and Damon ordered a bottle of something Italian and expensive without looking at the list. I watched him fidget with his napkin, noticed the way he kept rehearsing words silently, and felt the first flutter of unease. Damon, you're kind of freaking me out. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. He stopped when the waiter returned with wine, poured 2 glasses with unnecessary ceremony, and finally left us alone. I wanted to talk about last night. My stomach flipped. The gala? Yeah. You seemed to have a good time. I did. It was incredible. The venue, the food, I stopped myself before saying your father and course corrected. The whole thing was so elegant. I felt like I was in a movie. Dad certainly seemed interested in you. Damon's tone was carefully neutral, but I caught the tension underneath. Really? I laughed, taking a sip of wine to cover my sudden nerves. I thought I embarrassed myself completely. Why would you think that? Because I hesitated, then figured there was no point in hiding it. Damon was my best friend. We told each other everything. I accidentally sent your dad a really inappropriate text that was meant for you. Damon's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. What? It's mortifying. I was texting you about how your dad looked, and I sent it to him instead because your names are right, next to each other in my contacts. I was laughing now, treating it like the ridiculous mishap it should have been. He was very gracious about it, though. We had a good laugh. What exactly did the text say? Damon's voice had gone flat, just, commenting on how attractive he is. The hair, the suit, the whole intimidating mafia boss thing. I waved my hand vaguely, missing entirely the way Damon's jaw had tightened. It was supposed to be a joke between us, but instead I sent it directly to the man himself. I wanted to die. Damon set his glass down very carefully. And what did he say? He asked me to elaborate. Heat crept up my neck at the memory. Then he asked me to dance. He was actually really sweet about the whole thing, considering how horrifying it could have been. Sweet. Damon repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Right, yeah. I mean, for someone with his reputation, he was surprisingly... Rose? Damon cut me off, and there was an edge in his voice I'd never heard before. I need to tell you something. The reason I wanted to have dinner tonight. The appetizers arrived. Some kind of bruschetta that probably tasted amazing, but suddenly I had no appetite for. Damon waited until the waiter left, took a breath like he was about to dive underwater, and opened his mouth to speak. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, swore quietly, and stood. I'm sorry. I need to bathroom. Give me 2 minutes. When I get back, I'm telling you, no more chickening out. He left before I could respond, and I watched him go with growing confusion. Damon was acting strange, nervous in a way that felt significant, and I was starting to suspect this dinner wasn't just about catching up. I pulled out my phone, scrolling mindlessly through social media to distract myself from the weird tension, when movement near the entrance caught my peripheral vision. My entire world tilted sideways. Stefan Walker had just walked through the door. The fork I'd been holding clattered against my plate, a sharp, piercing clang that sounded like a gunshot in the elegant quiet of the restaurant. 6 months. It had been 6 months since I'd filed the restraining order, since I'd changed my locks and my phone number, since I'd started sleeping with a bat next to my bed. 6 months of therapy appointments where I learned to say it wasn't my fault without choking on the words. 6 months of rebuilding myself into someone who could laugh again, who could trust again, who could exist without constantly looking over her shoulder. And now he was here at Marcello's, Boston's most elegant Italian restaurant, with some blonde woman on his arm and that charming smile I'd once believed meant love, but now recognized as a weapon. It started with the sound. The ambient chatter of the restaurant, the clinking of silverware, the soft jazz piano, the polite laughter, suddenly warped. It sounded like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant and wrong. Thud-thud, thud-thud. My heartbeat was so loud it drowned out the music, drowned out everything except the roaring in my ears. My hands went numb. The world narrowed to a pinpoint, my vision tunneling until the only thing I could see was him. Stefan's eyes swept the restaurant with that practiced casual sweep, and when they landed on me, his smile widened, the smile of someone who'd spotted wounded prey. He said something to the blonde, gestured toward the bar. She nodded and walked away, completely unaware she was dating a monster. Then Stefan began walking directly toward my table. Each step echoed in my chest like a countdown to detonation. I knew that walk. Knew the way he rolled his shoulders, the tilt of his head that meant he was about to say something cruel disguised as concern. He was coming to humiliate me, to remind me I'd never be good enough, to destroy the first night in months I'd felt brave enough to leave my apartment alone. Panic seized me like ice water flooding my veins. My chest tightened, the air thinned. I couldn't breathe properly. Each inhale felt like sucking through a straw. Never enough oxygen, never enough space in my lungs. I couldn't let him reach me. Couldn't hear his voice again, that voice that whispered poison and called it love. He was 3 tables away now. My eyes swept the restaurant desperately, searching for an exit, a distraction, anything. That's when I saw him, Frederick Cattaneo. 2 tables over, dining alone, a half-finished steak and wine glass in front of him. Dark hair pulled back in that signature bun, reading something on his phone with a kind of focused intensity that made the world around him irrelevant. Stefan was 2 tables away now, and I could smell his cologne, the same scent that used to make me feel safe before it became associated with fear. I didn't think. There was no time to think. I stood so abruptly, my chair scraped against the hardwood floor, grabbed my clutch with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and crossed the space between tables on legs that threatened to buckle with every step. Frederick looked up when my shadow fell across his table, and I watched recognition flash in those dangerous dark eyes, followed immediately by concern when he saw my face. "Rose." I didn't let him finish. Because Stefan was right behind me now, I could feel his presence like a physical weight, and if I hesitated for even 1 second, I'd lose my nerve entirely. I leaned down and pressed my lips against Frederick's. The world stopped. I braced myself for revulsion. I braced myself to be pushed away, to be rejected, to make this nightmare even worse by assaulting a mafia boss in the middle of his dinner. Instead, a large, warm hand slid up my neck, his thumb coming to rest against my pulse point, feeling the way it hammered frantically against my skin. He didn't just kiss me back, he devoured the space between us. Frederick's mouth claimed mine with controlled intensity, and I tasted scotch and expensive tobacco and something dark, something dangerous that I couldn't name but wanted more of. Stefan's kisses had always been demanding, taking, never giving. Rough hands that grabbed instead of held, lips that bruised instead of caressed. But Frederick? Frederick kissed me like he was anchoring me to the earth. His mouth was firm, commanding, but there was gentleness underneath the possession. His stubble grazed my chin, the friction sending a jolt of electricity straight through me that shattered my panic into a million pieces. His other hand moved to my waist, pulling me down into his lap in one smooth motion that looked natural, practiced, like we'd done this 1,000 times before. I gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage of the opening, deepening the kiss until I forgot where I was, forgot why I was doing this, forgot everything except the taste of him and the way his thumb stroked my pulse point in a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. When he finally pulled back just enough to speak, his forehead rested against mine, and his voice was low enough that only I could hear. "Who? Please," I whispered, voice breaking. "My ex. Please pretend." Frederick's entire body changed beneath me. The gentleness vanished, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. His muscles coiled tight like a spring about to release, and when his eyes opened, I saw the predator emerge. His hand tightened possessively on my waist, thumb stroking once against my hip, in a gesture meant to soothe but that felt claiming. Then he turned us both to face whoever was standing behind me, keeping me firmly positioned in his lap, his body a human shield between me and the threat. "Tesoro," Frederick said, his voice carrying just loud enough for nearby tables to hear, rich with Italian endearment that made my stomach flip. "Who's interrupting our dinner?" The possessiveness in his tone, the casual intimacy, the way he held me like I belonged there. It was a performance, and it was perfect. I turned my head to see Stefan standing frozen 2 feet away, his expression cycling through confusion to recognition to genuine fear. I was just saying hello to an old friend. Stefan's voice had lost all its usual confidence. "She doesn't look like she wants to say hello." Frederick's tone never rose, never lost that deadly calm, but menace radiated from every carefully chosen word. "In fact, she looks terrified, which makes me wonder what kind of friend you were." His thumb continued that slow, possessive stroke against my waist, and I realized he wasn't doing it for show. He was feeling my trembling, monitoring my fear, his body tense and ready to move if Stefan came any closer. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I didn't know she was with someone. When you're upsetting a woman in my establishment, it concerns me." Frederick's hand shifted slightly on my waist, and the movement was subtle but unmistakable. A predator adjusting his position before the strike. Stefan's face went pale. "Your establishment? I own this restaurant. Among others." Frederick's gaze was absolutely glacial. "And you're making my guest very uncomfortable, so you're going to walk away. Now, she's not, you don't understand. Rose, you don't need..." Frederick's voice dropped to a lethal quiet that was somehow more terrifying than shouting. You have 3 seconds before I decide you're a problem that needs permanent solving. 1. The change in the air was palpable. This wasn't a threat, it was a promise. And Stefan, for all his manipulation skills, was smart enough to recognize genuine danger when it was staring him in the face. Fine, whatever. She's not worth the trouble anyway, Stefan muttered, backing away. 2. Stefan practically ran for the exit, grabbing the blonde from the bar and leaving so fast he nearly knocked over a waiter. The restaurant gradually returned to normal volume as surrounding diners lost interest in the drama and returned to their meals. But Frederick didn't immediately release me. I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering, tremors running through my entire body, and his hand continued that slow, soothing stroke against my waist, while his other hand remained on my neck, thumb still resting against my pulse. "Breathe, Tesoro," he murmured, his lips close enough to my ear that I felt his breath. "He's gone. You're safe." I tried to pull away, suddenly aware we were still in this intimate position, that I was sitting in Frederick Cattaneo's lap in the middle of a crowded restaurant, that people were definitely watching, even if they were pretending not to. But Frederick's grip didn't loosen. "Not yet. You're still trembling." His thumb brushed along my jawline, and the gesture was meant to be comforting but sent heat spiraling through me that had nothing to do with fear. "And you're not breathing properly. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. I followed his instructions, and his hand on my waist matched the rhythm, applying gentle pressure on each exhale, like he was manually reminding my lungs how to work. "I'm sorry," I managed once I could form words. I panicked. "I shouldn't have dragged you into—" "Stop apologizing." His voice was firm. Who was he? My ex, Stefan Walker. Even saying his name made my stomach churn. It was bad. Frederick's jaw tightened, and I felt the tension radiate through his entire body. How bad? Bad enough that I have a restraining order? Bad enough that I'm still in therapy 6 months later? His expression went absolutely glacial, and for a moment I saw exactly why people feared Frederick Cattaneo. "Does he usually approach you like this?" "No. I changed my number, my routines, everything. I haven't seen him since the restraining order." My voice cracked. I thought I was safe. "You are safe." The certainty in Frederick's voice was absolute, unshakable. "He won't come near you again. I'll make sure of it." Before I could ask what that meant, what he planned to do, footsteps approached from behind. "Papa?" Damon's voice made my blood turn to ice. I scrambled out of Frederick's lap immediately, and this time he let me go, though his hands trailed down my arms slowly, reluctantly, like he was checking one more time that I was steady before releasing me completely. I turned to find Damon standing frozen 3 feet away, and the devastation on his face made my chest physically ache. His eyes moved from me to his father and back again, taking in my tear-stained face, Frederick's protective stance, the rumpled way my dress had gotten twisted from being in his lap, the unmistakable intimacy of the scene he'd walked into. "Damon!" I rushed toward him, words tumbling out desperately. Stefan was here, my ex. He approached me, and I panicked, and I saw. His voice was flat, emotionless in that way that meant he was feeling too much. "The whole restaurant saw you kissing my father." Frederick stood, and I watched father and son face each other across 3 feet of expensive hardwood that might as well have been a canyon. "Her ex-boyfriend showed up and made a scene," Frederick said, his tone even but not apologetic. She was frightened. I removed the threat. "By kissing her?" Damon's question was directed entirely at his father, and hurt cracked through the flat tone. "That was your solution?" "I kissed him first," I interjected quickly. "As a distraction. To make Stefan think I was with someone so he'd leave me alone, and you just went along with it?" Damon was still looking at Frederick, something passing between them that I couldn't fully read. Years of history, unspoken expectations, disappointment. "Yes." Frederick's answer was simple, direct, completely unapologetic. The silence that fell was terrible. 3 people standing in the middle of an elegant restaurant while the world continued its dinner service around us, oblivious to the fact that something fundamental had just shattered. "I need to talk to Rose," Damon said finally, voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "Alone. We should discuss her safety first." Frederick started. "Dad." The word came out sharp, almost desperate. "Please, I can handle this." Frederick looked at me, And I saw genuine concern in those dark eyes, along with something else: possessiveness, regret, and that hunter's gleam that said this wasn't over, not by a long shot. "Will you be all right?" he asked me directly, ignoring his son's presence entirely for that moment. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Anytime you need help, Tesoro. I mean that." He held my gaze a beat longer than necessary, then nodded once to Damon. "Take care of her." He left a $100 bill on his table beside his unfinished dinner and walked away, leaving his presence lingering in the air like expensive cologne. Damon and I sat back down at our original table in silence. The appetizers had gone cold, the wine looked suddenly unappetizing, and my best friend was looking at me like I'd just taken something irreplaceable and smashed it on the floor. "The thing I wanted to tell you tonight," Damon said finally, his voice rough around the edges. "It feels stupid now, pointless." "Damon, what is it?" I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. He took a breath, and I watched him make the decision to just say it, to rip off the bandage and deal with the bleeding after. "I'm in love with you, Rose. I have been for 2 years. My hand flew to my mouth, shock stealing all the air from my lungs. "What?" "I've been in love with you since that night you showed up at my apartment crying after Stefan threw a glass at your head. Since you let me take you to the hospital and lied to the doctors about how it happened because you were still making excuses for him. Since you finally let me help you leave." His words came faster now, like a dam breaking after holding back too much for too long. "I waited because you needed time to heal. Waited for you to feel safe again. Waited for the right moment to tell you how I felt without pressuring you or making you feel like you owed me anything." Damon, I couldn't form coherent words. This was Damon, my best friend, my safe person. The idea that he'd been carrying this for 2 years while I remained completely oblivious felt impossible, absurd, devastating. "I was going to tell you tonight. That's what this whole dinner was supposed to be." His laugh was bitter, broken. I had it all planned. The nice restaurant, the wine, the speech I'd rehearsed about 50 times. But then you spent 10 minutes talking about my father's tattoos and how attractive he is. Then I came back from the bathroom to find you in his lap with his hands all over you. "I didn't know," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "I swear I had no idea you felt that way." "I know. That's what makes this so much worse, somehow." He ran a hand through his hair, and I'd never seen him look so lost, so young. "If you'd known and rejected me, at least it would have been a choice." "But you never even considered me that way, did you? Not even once?" The truth sat heavy between us, unavoidable. I could lie, could try to soften this blow, but Damon deserved better than comfortable lies. "No," I said quietly, hating myself for it. "I've never thought of you that way. You're my person, Damon. Your family. But not like that." He finished for me, nodding like he'd expected it but hoped otherwise. "Yeah, I'm getting that now. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry for your feelings. Don't ever apologize for that." His voice cracked. "But be sorry for kissing my father." The accusation hit like a physical blow. It wasn't like that. I was terrified. He was the only person nearby who could what? Save you? Damon leaned forward and his eyes were red-rimmed. "Rose, it didn't look like fear when you pulled away from that kiss. It looked like something else, entirely." My face burned because he was right. That kiss had started as desperate self-preservation but had transformed into something I absolutely did not want to examine right now. I don't know what I felt. Fear, maybe. Or relief that someone dangerous was finally on my side for once. He's dangerous, Rose. Not just because of what he does, the business, the violence, all of that. He's dangerous because of how he is with women he wants. He doesn't want me. Yes, he does. Damon's tone was absolutely certain, resigned. I saw it last night at the gala. Saw the way he looked at you when you weren't paying attention. The way he touched you like he was already claiming you. And now he knows you're available. Now he knows you'll kiss him when you're scared. You've given him an opening. And my father doesn't ignore openings. He exploits them. The words sent an uncomfortable thrill through me that I refused to acknowledge. This is insane. Last night was an accident. Tonight was panic. There's nothing between your father and me. Yet. Damon's phone was already out, but right now, we have a bigger problem than my broken heart. Stefan knows you were here tonight. He approached you in public despite the restraining order. That piece of paper clearly isn't stopping him. Reality crashed back in, cold and terrifying. I'll be more careful. Different restaurants, different routes home. He knows where you live, Rose. The truth of that hit like ice water. Stefan had lived with me for a year before everything fell apart. He knew my address, my work schedule, my favorite grocery store, my morning running route. Changing my phone number and filing legal paperwork didn't erase that intimate knowledge. I'll get better locks. Maybe one of those security cameras. And if he shows up drunk in the middle of the night, if he gets past your new locks, are you going to fight him off alone? My hands started shaking again just thinking about it. I can't afford to move. I can't afford a hotel for more than a night or two. I'm barely making rent as it is, Damon. He was quiet for a long moment, and I watched him have some internal debate, saw the exact moment he came to a decision he didn't like but couldn't avoid. Dad has a secure penthouse downtown. He uses it for business meetings but doesn't actually live there. High security building, doorman who knows everyone who comes and goes, panic buttons in every room that connect directly to his security team. I can't impose on your father like that, especially not after... You're not imposing. I'm offering... He was already dialing, and I wanted to stop him but couldn't figure out how. And knowing him, he'll insist. Damon, after what just happened, staying in your father's apartment is the last thing. After what just happened, you're even less safe than you were this morning. His call connected. Hey, Dad, I need a favor. I couldn't hear Frederick's response, but I watched Damon's jaw tighten, saw resignation settle into his expression. Rose's ex showed up at the restaurant. The one you just threatened. He clearly knows where to find her, and there's a restraining order he's already violated once tonight. She needs somewhere safe to stay while we figure out next steps. Pause. Yeah, I figured you would. Thanks. He hung up and looked at me with eyes that held too much pain, too much understanding. He's sending a car in 15 minutes. You'll stay at the penthouse tonight. Tomorrow he'll arrange security to help you pack essentials from your apartment. This is too much. It's necessary. And Rose? He stood, pulled out his wallet, and dropped cash on the table without counting it. I need space. From you, from both of you. I just can't watch this. Tears burned my eyes, spilling over despite my best efforts. Damon, please don't. You broke my heart tonight, and I know you didn't mean to. I know you can't control who you have feelings for or who you're attracted to. His voice was gentle despite the devastation written across his face. But I can't watch whatever's starting between you and my father. I physically cannot do it. There's nothing starting. Tonight was just... not yet. But there will be. He said it with the kind of certainty that came from knowing Frederick Cattaneo for 26 years, from understanding exactly how his father operated. I saw how he looked at you tonight, how you looked at him. Rose, my father always gets what he wants, always, and he's decided he wants you. The car Frederick sent was black, expensive, and driven by a man who looked more bodyguard than chauffeur. Broad shoulders, calculating eyes, the kind of person who knew how to handle threats efficiently. Damon waited with me on the sidewalk, his presence both comforting and excruciating, because I could feel the distance growing between us with every passing second, our friendship cracking under the weight of unspoken feelings and impossible situations. When the car pulled up, I turned to him one last time, desperate to fix this somehow. How long? How much space do you need? I don't know. His voice cracked, and I saw him struggling to hold himself together. Ask me again when you're not thinking about my father. He walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the Boston night, and I watched my best friend leave, taking 5 years of easy friendship and unconditional support with him. The driver opened the door silently, professionally, and I climbed into the back seat with legs that barely supported my weight. My mind spun with too many thoughts to process. Stefan's appearance, Damon's confession, Frederick's protective fury, that kiss that had tasted like scotch and danger and had felt nothing like pretending. My phone buzzed with a text from Frederick. The security code is 4739. Panic buttons are labeled in every room. I'll be there in 20 minutes to make sure you're settled and the security systems are functioning properly. I stared at the message, my heart doing something complicated and terrifying in my chest, and realized with crystal clarity that Damon was right about one thing. Frederick Cattaneo had decided he wanted something, and that something was me. The penthouse was intimidating in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just expensive. though it was clearly that, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston's skyline, marble countertops, and furniture that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. It was the masculinity of it. Everything was dark leather and sharp edges and minimalist design that screamed power and control. I stood in the entrance with my overnight bag, feeling like an imposter in someone else's life, when my phone buzzed. Lobby in 5 minutes. Stay there. F. Frederick arrived exactly 5 minutes later, and I heard him before I saw him. Confident footsteps in the hallway, a brief exchange with someone I assumed was building security, then a key turning in the lock. He walked in still wearing his suit from whatever business he'd been handling, though his jacket was gone and his sleeves were rolled up to reveal those tattoos. His hair had come partially loose from the bun, strands framing his face in a way that made him look less mafia boss and more dangerously attractive man. He didn't unpack. His eyes swept the apartment, landing on my bag still sitting by the door. I wasn't sure where. Anywhere you want. This is your space now. He moved past me into the kitchen, started opening cabinets with the ease of someone who knew exactly where everything was, despite claiming not to live here. Security code is 4739. Panic buttons are here. He pointed to a discrete button near the light switch. Here, and in the bedroom and bathroom. They connect directly to my phone. Not 911. Me first, that seems necessary. He pulled out a bottle of scotch, poured 2 fingers into a crystal glass. The building has cameras in all common areas. Doorman checks IDs of anyone who isn't a resident. You're registered as a guest under my name, which means no one gets up here without my explicit permission. I watched him drink, watched the way his throat moved, and tried not to think about how his mouth had felt against mine. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. He set the glass down and turned to face me fully. I know you were terrified in that restaurant. I know you needed help and had nowhere safe to go. I know your best friend is my son, which makes you family by extension. His dark eyes locked onto mine. That's sufficient. But the penthouse, the security, personally overseeing all of this, it's too much for someone who's just family by extension. For my peace of mind, it's not enough. The intensity in his voice made my stomach flip. Now, have you eaten? I'm not hungry. That wasn't what I asked. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling through what looked like restaurant contacts. You need to eat. Your body's been in fight or flight mode for 2 days. Low blood sugar makes panic attacks worse. The casual knowledge of panic attack triggers through me. My wife had them. After our son was born, I learned he didn't look up from his phone. Italian, Thai, or Japanese. The mention of his dead wife felt like stepping on sacred ground. You don't have to. Rose, my name was a command. Pick, or I'm ordering all 3. Italian, I said quietly, because arguing seemed exhausting. He made the call in rapid Italian that I couldn't follow, then hung up and gestured toward the couch. Sit. I'm going to show you how everything works while we wait for food. 40 minutes later, we were sitting on opposite ends of his absurdly comfortable leather couch with pasta between us, and I was trying not to notice how domestic this felt. Frederick had changed into jeans and a black t-shirt, his hair completely down now, falling past his shoulders in dark waves that made him look younger. Less intimidating, almost normal if you ignored the dangerous edge that clung to him like expensive cologne. You're not eating, he observed, twirling pasta with practiced ease. I'm eating. You've had 3 bites in 10 minutes. That's not eating. That's performing eating. I set my fork down. I called Damon 6 times today. He won't answer, won't respond to texts. I think I've permanently destroyed the most important friendship in my life, and I don't know how to fix it. Frederick was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. He's hurt. That's not your fault, isn't it? I kissed his father. You survived. You asked for help in a moment of terror, and I provided it. His voice was firm. You're not responsible for managing other people's feelings about your survival, Rose. Not even Damon's. The words hit somewhere deep, and I felt tears burning behind my eyes. No, not burning. I could feel them building, hot and pressurized, like my tear ducts were about to betray me completely. He told me he's been in love with me for 2 years. 2 years, Frederick. And I never noticed. What kind of person doesn't notice that? The kind who was busy surviving an abusive relationship and rebuilding herself afterward. He set his own plate down and angled his body toward me. You're not a villain for not returning his feelings. You're just honest. Honesty destroyed our friendship. His dishonesty destroyed it. He hid his feelings, built expectations you never agreed to, and then blamed you when reality didn't match his fantasy. Frederick's tone was gentle but unyielding. That's not on you, Tesoro. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. You make it sound so simple, because it is. Complicated doesn't mean it's your fault. He stood, collected our barely touched plates, and disappeared into the kitchen. When he came back, he was carrying wine and 2 glasses. You're afraid of me. The statement was so direct it startled a laugh out of me. Should I be? Probably, but not because I'd hurt you physically. He poured wine with steady hands. Because I'm not good at letting go of things I want. My heart started doing acrobatics. And you want... what? You... The word landed between us like a grenade. But I'm trying to be civilized about it. Civilized? My voice came out breathy, and I hated how affected I sounded. Giving you space. Time to process everything that's happened. Not pursuing you while you're vulnerable and dealing with fresh trauma. His mouth curved into something that definitely wasn't civilized. But I'm failing spectacularly at the civilized part. You are pursuing me. I said I'm trying. Not that I'm succeeding. He handed me a wine glass, and our fingers brushed. The contact lasted half a second too long to be accidental. You make it very difficult to stay away, Tesoro. Why? I took a sip of wine I didn't taste. I'm a mess. I'm hiding from my ex. I've destroyed my best friendship. I cry at random intervals. Because you're real. He cut me off. Because you laugh like you mean it when you're not crying. Because you're stronger than you realize, and I can see it even when you can't. He paused. And because when you kissed me to escape your ex, you tasted like fear and hope in equal measure, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. That kiss was just a beginning. He moved closer on the couch, eliminating the safe distance between us. You can pretend it was just panic, just convenience, but we both know what happened when I kissed you back. Nothing happened. Everything happened. His voice dropped lower, and I felt it in my spine. Your pulse jumped under my thumb. Your breathing changed. You made this small sound in the back of your throat when I deepened the kiss. He demonstrated by trailing his finger along his own throat, and I couldn't look away from the movement. That wasn't fear, Rose. That was want. My face was on fire. You're my best friend's father. I'm aware this is wrong, probably. Then why are you... The television, which I hadn't even noticed was on, muted in the background, suddenly showed a familiar face. Stefan Walker. My wine glass nearly slipped from my numb fingers. The caption read, "Local businessman hospitalized following alleged assault." I lunged for the remote, unmuted it with shaking hands. Walker, 29, was found outside his Beacon Hill residence late last night with multiple injuries, including a broken nose and 3 fractured ribs. Walker claims the attack was unprovoked, but sources close to the investigation say there may be more to the story. Walker has a history of... I muted it again and turned to Frederick with my heart pounding. Did you do this? Did I personally put him in the hospital? No, his expression gave nothing away. Did I make it clear to certain people that he was a problem requiring attention? Yes, people can't just assault people because you tell them to. I can, and I did, and he won't come near you again. He said it like he was discussing the weather, not casual violence. If that makes me a monster in your eyes, I can live with that. What I can't live with is you being afraid. I stood up, needing distance, needing air. You had someone beat him up. I had someone deliver a message. The message was, stay away from Rose Chen or the next time will be worse. Frederick stood too, but didn't approach. He violated a restraining order. He approached you in public. He scared you. That has consequences. Legal consequences. Not mob justice. Legal consequences take time. Restraining orders are paper. I deal in certainty. His eyes were hard, unapologetic. I won't apologize for protecting you, Rose. I don't care if you think it's wrong. I wanted to be horrified. Wanted to feel moral outrage at the casual violence, the abuse of power, the complete disregard for law and order. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Safe. God help me, I felt safe. And that terrified me more than anything else. I need air. I moved toward the balcony doors. Rose, just give me a minute, please. He let me go. The balcony was all glass and steel and ridiculous luxury, overlooking a city that glittered like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. The night air was cold enough to sting, and I welcomed the bite of it. The door opened behind me. "I told Damon I wouldn't stay away from you," Frederick said quietly. He asked me to, begged me to, actually, and I told him no. I didn't turn around. When? This morning. He called before I came here. I heard him move closer. He said if I cared about him at all, I'd leave you alone, let you heal without complications. And you said? I told him I can't do that I won't do that. His voice was right behind me now. I told him I'm going to pursue you regardless of how he feels about it, and he'd have to decide if he could live with that. I finally turned to face him. That's cruel. It's honest. Lying would be crueler. Letting him hope I'd step aside when I have no intention of doing so, that would be the real cruelty. He looked at me with those dark eyes that saw too much. I don't lie to my son, Rose, even when the truth destroys him. So you're just, what, going to pursue me regardless? Yes, no hesitation, no guilt, just certainty, even though it hurts him? I'll hurt my son to have you. The honesty was brutal, cutting. That's the kind of man I am. I told you, I don't let go of what I want. That's terrifying. He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne, woodsy and expensive. Is it? Or is it exactly what you need after a man who punished you for wanting things? The truth hit me like lightning. Stefan had made me apologize for desire, for ambition, for wanting more than what he thought I deserved. Had called me selfish for having needs, greedy for having dreams, ungrateful for wanting better. Frederick was offering unapologetic want without shame or apology. I don't know what this is, I whispered. Then let me show you. He cupped my face with one large hand, thumb stroking my cheekbone in that gesture that was becoming familiar. His other hand settled on my waist, not grabbing, just resting there with possessive certainty. He leaned in, and I felt his breath against my lips, my eyes fluttering closed in anticipation. He stopped millimeters away. My eyes flew open. What are you doing? Not yet. You said, when I kiss you again, it won't be a rescue. It won't be pretend. His thumb continued that maddening stroke along my cheekbone. It will be a claim, and you need to be sure you want to be claimed to sorrow. I am sure. You're still healing. You're confused about Damon. You're scared of what I am and what I'm capable of. He pulled back slightly, and I actually made a sound of protest. Think about what it means. I'm not a good man, Rose. I'm possessive, controlling, dangerous. I've killed people. I'll kill anyone who threatens you without hesitation. I had your ex beaten for approaching you in a restaurant. Is that what you want? Yes, I breathed. You're not thinking clearly. You're high on adrenaline and safety and the relief of not being alone. His voice was gentle despite the rejection. Ask me again when you're sure, when you've had time to think clearly about what being with me means. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle, achingly tender, completely at odds with everything he'd just said about being dangerous. And then he was pulling away. Get some sleep, Rose. I'll see you tomorrow. He left me alone on the balcony with my racing heart and the ache of wanting and the growing certainty that I'd already made my choice. I just needed to prove it to him. The next morning, I drove to my old apartment, for the first time since moving into the penthouse. I needed clothes, needed my laptop and some books and the stupid stuffed rabbit Damon had won me at a carnival 3 years ago. But more than that, I needed to face it. My old life, my old fear, the place where Stefan had slowly dismantled my sense of self until I barely recognized my own reflection. The hallway smelled like cigarettes and old carpet, and my hands shook as I unlocked the door to my studio apartment. Everything was exactly as I'd left it 48 hours ago. The unmade bed, the dishes in the sink, the photo of Damon and me at his college graduation, both of us grinning, back when everything was simpler. I picked up the frame, traced my finger over Damon's face, and felt guilt crash over me like a wave. I'd destroyed that easy friendship, that unconditional support. Gone because I'd kissed his father and couldn't stop thinking about it. My phone was in my hand before I'd made a conscious decision. Damon's contact pulled up. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, he answered. Don't hang up, I said immediately. Please, I'm not going to hang up. His voice sounded tired, worn thin. I just needed time to think. I miss you so much. I was pacing now, phone pressed too hard against my ear, staring at that photo. I'm so sorry, Damon. About everything. I miss you too. The admission sounded painful. But Rose, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Anything. Are you falling for my father? I looked around the apartment, at the space where Stefan had thrown a glass at my head, at the kitchen where he'd accidentally burned my hand on the stove, at the bedroom where he'd isolated me so completely I'd forgotten I was allowed to want things. Then I thought about Frederick, about the way he'd kissed me like I was something precious and dangerous all at once, about the brutal honesty when he said he'd hurt his own son to have me, about the casual violence he'd deployed to keep me safe. I don't know, I whispered. Maybe. Everything is happening so fast and I don't know what I'm feeling, or if it's real, or if I'm just rebounding from trauma with someone who makes you feel protected. He finished, and there was understanding in his voice, not accusation. Yeah, I wondered that too. I don't want to lose you. You won't. Not completely. He was quiet for a moment, and I heard traffic in the background. But I can't be your best friend while you're exploring whatever this is with my father. I physically can't do it, Rose. It's killing me. I understand. Do you love him? The question was so blunt it stole my breath. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. I looked down at the photo in my hand, at Damon's arm around my shoulders, at how young we both looked. No, I don't love him. But I'm drawn to him in ways I don't understand, and it scares me. Good. It should scare you. He's not a safe choice, Rose. He's never going to be safe. I know. But you're going to choose him anyway, aren't you? I couldn't answer. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Be careful, Damon said finally. And Rose, when this inevitably blows up, and it will blow up because nothing about my father is simple, call me. I'll still come. I'll always come. The line went dead. I stood in my old apartment, holding a photo of a friendship I'd broken, and realized I needed to make a choice. Stay here, in this space that smelled like fear and old mistakes, where I was safe from Frederick Cattaneo and his dangerous promises, or go back to that penthouse and claim what I wanted without apology. Stefan had taught me to be small, to want nothing, to apologize for existing. Frederick was offering the opposite, messy, dangerous, probably wrong in 100 ways, but unapologetically honest about it. I grabbed my laptop, some clothes, the stuffed rabbit, and the photo of Damon, locked the door behind me. In my car, I pulled out my phone and typed before I could talk myself out of it. I'm sure. His response came within seconds. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't change your mind. I drove back to the penthouse with my heart pounding and my hands steady on the wheel, knowing that when I walked through that door, everything would change. And I couldn't wait. Frederick was waiting for me in the penthouse parking garage when I arrived. He was leaning against his car, a sleek black Mercedes, arms crossed, hair loose around his shoulders, watching the entrance like he'd been tracking my location the entire drive back. I pulled into the guest spot, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment with my hands still gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe normally. He was at my door before I could process, opening it, offering his hand. You came back, he said. I told you I was sure. People change their minds. His hand was warm, steady, and when I took it, he pulled me out of the car and immediately against his chest. I'm glad you didn't. We stood there in the dim parking garage, and I could feel his heartbeat through his shirt, fast, matching mine. What happens now? I asked. Now? He tilted my face up, thumb stroking my cheekbone in that gesture I was learning meant he was trying to be, gentle when everything in him wanted to possess. Now we go upstairs. We talk. We figure out how to tell Damon without destroying him completely. And if we can't figure that out, then we tell him anyway and deal with the fallout. His honesty was brutal as always. But tonight, Rose, I just want to be with you without the world demanding answers. Upstairs, Frederick moved through the penthouse like he owned it, which he did technically, pouring wine with steady hands while I perched on the edge of the couch like a guest in someone else's life. Relax, he said, handing me a glass. You look like you're about to bolt. I'm not going to bolt. Good, because I'd chase you. He said it like a fact, not a threat, and sat down beside me, close enough that our thighs touched, close enough that I caught the scent of his cologne. We drank in silence for a moment, and I realized this was the first time we'd been alone together without crisis driving us. No Stefan to escape, no balcony almost kiss to navigate. Just us, and the choice we'd made, and the consequences waiting on the other side. Tell me something true, Frederick said suddenly. What? Something real. Something you don't tell people. His dark eyes held mine. I want to know you, Rose. Not just the version you show the world. I thought about deflecting, about giving him something safe and surface level. But he'd been nothing but honest with me, even when the honesty was ugly. I'm terrified that I'm choosing you for the wrong reasons, I admitted, that I'm not actually falling for you. I'm just falling for the idea of someone powerful enough to keep me safe, that this is just trauma response dressed up as attraction. He didn't flinch, didn't try to reassure me with empty platitudes. That's a fair fear. It is? Of course it is. You're 6 months out of an abusive relationship. I'm older, powerful, protective. It would be easy to confuse safety with love. He set his wine down, turned to face me fully. But Rose, I'm going to pursue you anyway. Even knowing you might be wrong about your feelings. Even knowing you might wake up in 6 months and realize you don't actually want me. That doesn't scare you? Terrifies me. His smile was wry, self-deprecating. But I'm 47 years old. I've spent 8 years being the dutiful widower, the perfect father, the controlled businessman. I'm done being safe. I want messy. I want uncertain. I want you, even if you're not sure about me yet. The honesty gutted me. Your turn. Tell me something true. He was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass, deciding something. I called in a favor to make sure you got the catering contract, he said finally. I blinked. What? The charity event. There were 5 proposals submitted. Yours was good, but there was another that was more established, more experienced. I made sure they chose you anyway. Heat and anger and something that felt uncomfortably like gratitude warred in my chest. Why would you do that? Because I wanted a reason to see you that wasn't just I can't stay away. Because I'm manipulative when I want something. Because I knew if I asked you to come to the estate, you'd make an excuse, but if you had business there... He shrugged. I'm not a good man, Tesoro. I told you that. You manufactured a reason to be alone with me. Yes, that's... Possessive? Controlling? Manipulative? His eyes held mine, unapologetic. Yes to all of that, but I'm not going to apologize for it. I want you. I use the tools available to get what I want. I stood up, needing space to process. This is what being with you looks like? You just orchestrate my life? I orchestrate opportunities. He stood too, but didn't approach. You still made the choice to come. You still sent that text saying you were sure. I created the circumstances, but you walked through the door yourself. He was right, and I hated that he was right. For the record, he continued, your proposal was excellent. You would have won on merit, eventually. I just accelerated the timeline. Because you're impatient. Because I'm 47 and life is short, and I've already wasted 8 years. I looked at him, this powerful, dangerous man who just admitted to manipulating circumstances to see me, and realized I wasn't actually angry. I was turned on. God help me, the possessiveness was working. Stay tonight, he said quietly. Not in the guest room. With me, my heart stuttered. Frederick, I'm not asking you to sleep with me. I'm asking you to sleep next to me. I want to know what you look like first thing in the morning. I want to hear you breathe while you dream. I want to fall asleep knowing you're safe. That's intense? Yes. Too much, too fast? Probably. But Rose, I've never been good at half measures. If we're doing this, I want all of you. Starting tonight, every rational bone in my body screamed that this was moving too fast, that I should pump the brakes, that falling into bed with Frederick Cattaneo, even just to sleep, was reckless and probably stupid. But I was done being rational. Okay, I whispered. His bedroom was all dark wood and masculine luxury, a king-sized bed with charcoal sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, abstract art that elevated the space. You can use the bathroom first, Frederick said, suddenly almost shy, which was absurd on a man who'd admitted to manufacturing business opportunities just to see me. I have spare toothbrushes in the drawer. Take whatever you need. I changed into the oversized t-shirt I'd brought, one of Damon's old college shirts that I'd stolen years ago, and the irony wasn't lost on me, and washed my face, trying not to think about the fact that I was about to sleep next to Frederick Cattaneo. When I came out, he was already in bed, shirtless, reading something on his phone. His hair was down, spread across the pillow, and the tattoos I'd only glimpsed before were fully visible, a sleeve on his left arm, something across his ribs. all black ink and intricate designs. He looked up when I emerged, and his eyes did that thing where they went dark with want before he schooled his expression into something more controlled. "Come here," he said, setting the phone aside. I climbed into his bed, and he immediately pulled me against him, my back to his chest, his arm around my waist. "Is this okay?" he murmured against my hair. "Yes." We lay there in the dark, and I could feel every point of contact, his chest against my back, his arm around my waist, his breath in my hair. It was intimate in ways that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with trust. "Rose? Yeah? Thank you for coming back." I laced my fingers through his. "Thank you for being worth coming back to." I felt him smile against my hair, and somehow, impossibly, I fell asleep in the arms of my best friend's father and felt safer than I had in months. 3 days later, the call came while I was stress baking in Frederick's penthouse kitchen, my coping mechanism, my love language, my way of not thinking about the fact that we still hadn't told Damon. "Frederick's event coordinator, professional and efficient. Miss Chen, the contracts are ready for your signature. Mr. Cattaneo requested you deliver them to his study at the estate this evening. 7 p.m.? I knew immediately this was Frederick's doing. He could have had the contracts couriered, could have met me anywhere, but he wanted me in his private space. 7 works, I said. After I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text. "Damon's away on business until tomorrow. I scheduled it deliberately. I want you in my study without worrying about him walking in." F, another text, "Wear that black dress, the one that drives me insane." F, I shouldn't have been turned on by the possessive manipulation, but I was. The Cattaneo estate was just as intimidating in daylight as it had been in my imagination, all old money and iron gates and the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. I wore the black dress. Obviously, I wore the black dress. The housekeeper who answered the door gave me a knowing smile that suggested Frederick had been talking about me, and I followed her through hallways lined with family photos. Damon at every age, Frederick and Carolina on their wedding day, generations of Cattaneos staring down from expensive frames. "Mr. Cattaneo's study," she said, stopping at a heavy wooden door. "He doesn't like to be disturbed, but he's been waiting for you." She knocked once, opened without waiting for response, and left me standing in the doorway. Frederick was at his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, hair in that devastating bun, reviewing documents with focused intensity. He looked up when I entered, and even through the reading glasses, I saw hunger. "Rose, come in." I clutched the contract folder and stepped inside. The lock clicked behind me. I jumped, spun toward the door. Frederick still hadn't moved, was still focused on whatever he was reading. "Habit. I don't like being disturbed when I'm working. Should I come back?" "No." He set the papers down, removed his glasses with deliberate slowness. "I've been waiting for you." The study was overwhelmingly masculine. Leather furniture, expensive art, wall of books, a bar cart with crystal decanters that caught the evening light. Behind his desk, family photos, Damon's childhood, his graduation, and prominently displayed, Frederick and Carolina on their wedding day. "She was beautiful," I said, looking at the photo. He came around the desk, leaned against it. "She looks kind." She was. She balanced me, made me remember I was human underneath all this. He gestured at himself, at the study, at the empire built on violence. Without her, I became just the business. Just the threat. Just the reputation. "Do you miss her?" Every day. The honesty was raw, unguarded. "But I'm not looking for her replacement, Rose. Carolina was Carolina, once in a lifetime. You're you. I'm looking for something new." He turned back to the contracts, started reading with that same meticulous attention. "Sit. This will take a few minutes." I sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, acutely aware of being alone with him, of the locked door, of the way he kept glancing at me over the paperwork like he was confirming I was real. He signed the final page, set his pen down with an audible click, and didn't dismiss me, just watched. The silence stretched, heavy with everything unsaid. "Ask me," he said finally. "Ask you what? Whatever question's been in your eyes all week, you think I haven't noticed? You watching me? Trying to figure something out?" Heat crept up my neck. "Why me?" "Specifics, Rose. I want specifics. You could have anyone. Someone younger, less complicated, without all my trauma and baggage and—" I gestured helplessly at myself. "Why me? You think I haven't asked myself that?" He pushed off the desk, closed the distance until I had to tilt my head back. You're my son's best friend, 23 years old, fresh from trauma. Every rational bone in my body says to walk away. But you make me feel alive again. His hand came up to cut my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone. Real laughter, real joy, real want. I'd forgotten what that felt like. I'm terrified of you, I blurted. He went still. Then I'll leave. Not because you'll hurt me like Stefan did. I grabbed his wrist before he could pull away. Because you'll matter too much. Because losing you would break me in ways Stefan never could. His eyes darkened. Then don't lose me. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. He leaned in, and I felt his breath against my lips. You want me. I want you. Everything else is noise. Everything else is your son. My best friend. Who's heartbroken because of us. I know. Pain flickered across his face, genuine and devastating. And I'll carry that guilt until I die. But Rose, I've been the dutiful father for 26 years. I've sacrificed my wants for duty, for family, for everyone else. For once, just once, I'm being selfish. Damon deserves better. He does. He deserves a father who steps aside, who puts his happiness first. His other hand settled on my waist, and the touch was electric. But that's not who I am with you. I choose you, Rose, over my guilt, over my son's feelings, over what's right. I choose you. The words cracked something, open in my chest. I choose you too, I whispered. He kissed me, not gentle, not tentative. He kissed me like he'd been restraining himself for weeks and the dam had finally broken. His mouth claimed mine with desperate hunger, and I tasted coffee and want and something darker I couldn't name. His hands moved to my hair, tilting my head back to deepen the kiss, and I gasped against his mouth. He took advantage, his tongue sliding against mine in a rhythm that made me forget where we were, forget why this was complicated, forget everything except the taste of him. Say it again, he demanded against my lips. I choose you again. I choose you, Federico. The use of his full name, intimate, trusting, the name his wife had used, broke something in him. He growled low in his throat and lifted me in one smooth motion, setting me on his desk. Papers scattered, pens rolled to the floor with soft thuds against hardwood. A leather folder slid off the edge with a muffled sound. His hands were everywhere, my waist, my thighs, my face, touching me like he was trying to memorize every curve, every response, every sound I made. I pulled his hair free from the bun, and it fell in dark waves past his shoulders. He looked younger like this, less controlled, dangerous in entirely new ways. Bellissima, he murmured against my neck, and I felt the scrape of stubble, rough, masculine, perfect, against sensitive skin. You have no idea how long I've wanted this. Show me, I breathed. His hands slid under my dress, thumbs stroking the bare skin of my thighs, and I arched into the touch. His mouth found mine again, and this kiss was all-consuming, teeth and tongue in desperate need. I found the buttons of his shirt, fumbled with them until I could slide my palms against bare skin. He was all muscle and heat and scars, and I wanted to know the story behind every mark. His hands moved higher, thumbs brushing the edge of my underwear, and I made a sound I'd never made before, desperate, wanting, completely undone. Rose, he groaned against my mouth. If we don't stop, don't stop! His phone rang. The sound shattered the moment like glass breaking. We both froze, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. Damon's ringtone. Cristo, Frederick swore. The Italian sharpened, frustrated. Don't answer it, I begged. He's my son, and I'm mine. He pulled back just enough to look at me, and his eyes were fierce. You're mine now, Rose. That doesn't change just because he's calling. But he stepped away, ran a hand through his disheveled hair, and answered. Damon? His voice was remarkably steady for someone who'd just had his hands up my dress. I watched him lie with practiced ease, watched him school his features into calm professionalism, while his lips were still swollen from kissing me, just finishing work. Rose dropped off contracts earlier. Not she's here now with her dress hiked up on my desk. Everything looks good. Her proposal was excellent. I slid off the desk, tried to straighten my dress with shaking hands, listened to Frederick discuss dinner plans with his son like he hadn't just been seconds away from. I love you too, Figlio. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the leather chair. You lied to him, I said, to buy us time. He turned back to me, and guilt flickered across his face before determination won. But I won't keep lying. We tell him tomorrow. Tomorrow. He's back from his trip. We tell him tomorrow, or I will. His hand settled on my waist, pulling me against him. We're together now, Rose. That's not a secret anymore. He'll hate us. Probably. His thumb stroked my hip through the fabric. But we're past the point of turning back. And if he never forgives, thus. The pain in his expression was real, raw. Then I'll have lost my son, and it will destroy me. But Rose, I won't lose you. I can't. I buried my face against his chest, and he held me while I processed the magnitude of what we'd done, what we were about to do. 3 days, I said against his shirt. You said 3 days. It's been 3 days. I know, so tomorrow we tell him. Tomorrow we tell him. He tilted my face up, forced me to meet his gaze. Are you ready for that? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, like he was sealing a promise. When he pulled back, his thumb traced my swollen lower lip. You should go, before I decide to keep you here. Is that a threat? It's a promise. He released me reluctantly. Drive safe. Text me when you're home. I gathered the signed contracts with trembling hands, tried to fix my hair into something that didn't scream I was, just making out with my best friend's father on his desk. Frederick watched with dark amusement. You look thoroughly kissed. That's not helpful. It's honest. He came up behind me, pulled me against his chest one more time, spoke against my ear. Tomorrow, tesoro. Tomorrow we stop hiding. I made it to the door before turning back. Federico? He looked up, and I saw vulnerability beneath the control. I'm terrified. So am I. His smile was crooked, honest. But I'm doing it anyway. I made it to my car before my phone buzzed. I kept your earring, the one that fell on my desk. I'll give it back tomorrow, after we tell Damon. But tonight, it's mine. F. I touched my ear. Sure enough, one earring was missing. Another text, I can still taste you. Drive safe. F. Despite everything, the guilt, the fear, the certainty this would end in disaster, I smiled. Because tomorrow, Frederick Cattaneo and I would stop pretending. And whatever happened after, at least it would be honest. I woke up the next morning to 3 texts from Frederick. Have breakfast delivered to penthouse. You barely ate last night. Don't overthink this. You're mine. That's all that matters. Good morning, tesoro. I'm thinking about last night, about you on my desk, about the sounds you made. My face burned as I read the last one, and I was equal parts mortified and turned on that he was thinking about it too. His possessiveness should have scared me. After Stefan, after learning that control could be a weapon, but instead, it grounded me. Frederick's control wasn't about making me small. It was about making me his. I texted back, good morning. I'm thinking about it too. His response was immediate. Careful. I'm in a meeting and that's dangerous territory. I smiled despite the guilt churning in my stomach, despite knowing that today we had to tell Damon, despite everything. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Frederick. Coffee today? I think I'm ready to talk. Damon. My stomach dropped. Yes, absolutely. When? 2 p.m., our usual place. Damon. I stared at the screen, panic rising like bile. I couldn't tell him over coffee. He deserved better than finding out in a crowded cafe that his best friend and his father were together. I called Frederick. He answered on the first ring. Rose, what's wrong? Damon wants to meet today. Coffee at 2. A brief silence, then. Are you telling him? Not in a coffee shop. He deserves better than that. Then don't. Wait until Friday. Dinner at the estate, all 3 of us. I'll be there when you tell him. His voice was calm, strategic, already planning. That's cowardly. It's strategic. And safer for everyone involved. I heard him moving, a door closing, suddenly alone wherever he was. Rose, if you tell him in public, he can't react honestly. He'll have to control himself, bottle it up, and that's worse. At home, he can yell, break things if he needs to. Get it all out. You want him to break things? I want him to process honestly instead of performing civility. He was right, and I hated it. Promise me you won't tell him today. He might ask directly, then deflect. Buy us 2 more days to figure out how to do this right. I agreed because I was a coward, because I wanted 2 more days of not watching my best friend's heartbreak in real time. Our usual coffee shop was a small place in the North End, tucked between a bakery and a bookstore, where Damon and I had spent countless afternoons dissecting our lives over lattes and biscotti. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at our regular table by the window, and when he looked up and smiled, I wanted to cry. Hey, he said, standing to hug me. Hey. I hugged him back, memorizing the familiar comfort of it, knowing this might be the last time for a while. We sat, and the barista brought over my usual order without me having to ask. Vanilla latte, extra foam, and I realized Damon must have ordered for me. "I'm sorry I disappeared," he said, stirring his black coffee. "That wasn't fair to you. I understand. I broke your heart. You didn't. You were honest about your feelings. That's all I asked for." He looked at me, and his eyes were sad but clear. "I can't be mad at you for not loving me the way I loved you. Damon, let me finish." He took a breath. "I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About us, about expectations, about how I built this entire fantasy in my head without ever checking if you were building it too. That's on me, not you." Guilt twisted in my stomach because he was being so understanding, so mature, and I was sitting here hiding the fact that I'd spent last night making out with his father. "I need to tell you something," I said. His expression shifted, guarded. "Is it about my father?" I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. "I'm not blind, Rose. He's been spending time with you, more than usual, and I know him. I know that look he gets when he wants something." Damon's jaw tightened. "Has he made a move?" My voice came out small, guilty. "Yes. And you?" I kissed him back. The silence that fell was painful, heavy, suffocating. I watched Damon process, watched him go through denial and acceptance and hurt in the space of 30 seconds. "Are you together?" he asked finally. "I don't know what we are, but there's something between us." He laughed, bitter and broken. "Of course there is. He always gets what he wants. Damon, I need to go." He stood abruptly, chair scraping against floor. "Please don't. I said I'd try to be your friend. I meant it. But I can't watch you fall for my father. I physically cannot do it, Rose." He pulled out his wallet, threw cash on the table. "When you figure out what you are with him, let me know. Until then, I need space." He walked out, and I sat there in our coffee shop with tears streaming down my face while other patrons pretended not to notice. Frederick let himself into the penthouse at 6 p.m. He had a key now, had given himself one without asking, and I couldn't even be annoyed about the presumption, and found me crying on the couch. He was across the room in 3 strides, pulling me into his arms, his hand immediately going to my hair in that soothing gesture. What happened? His voice was calm, but I felt tension in his muscles. I told him, or started to. He asked directly about you, and I couldn't lie. I buried my face against his chest. He walked out. "Cristo, I told you to wait." He asked directly, Frederick. I couldn't sit there and lie to his face. He was quiet for a moment, his hand continuing that steady stroke through my hair. "What did you say exactly?" I explained the conversation, every painful detail, and felt him tense when I got to the part about Damon saying Frederick always gets what he wants. "He's angry," Frederick said finally. "That's expected. This was a mistake. We should end this before it gets worse." He tilted my face up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "No, but Damon, we'll be hurt whether we end it now or in 6 months. At least this way, we're honest." His thumb stroked my cheekbone. "Rose, I'm not giving you up because it's hard. I'm not that man. I've lost him, not forever. He's stubborn, but he's not cruel. He'll come around eventually. How can you be so sure? Because I raised him better than that. And because he loves you. That doesn't just disappear because you don't love him back the way he wanted." I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Damon's friendship was strong enough to survive this, but I'd seen the devastation on his face. Frederick held me while I cried, and when I finally stopped, he ordered Thai food and made me eat, made me laugh with a story about a business deal gone wrong, made me forget for small moments that my life was imploding. "Stay with me tonight," he said after dinner. "Not at your apartment, not alone. Here with me." "Okay," I whispered, because being alone sounded unbearable. We fell asleep tangled together on his couch, and I dreamed of broken friendships and locked doors and earrings I'd never get back. The next evening, I was catering a dinner for Frederick's business associates at a private event space downtown, Italian-Asian fusion menu, my specialty, the kind of high-profile event that could make or break my catering reputation. Everything was going perfectly. The guests were impressed, Frederick's associates were complimentary, and I was actually enjoying myself for the first time in days. Then Stefan walked through the door. I saw him before he saw me, drunk, disheveled, furious, and my entire body went into fight-or-flight mode. He'd been stalking me. Must have been following me from the penthouse, tracking my social media, piecing together my schedule. The restraining order was just paper. The hospital visit hadn't been enough of a deterrent. He was here, and he was angry. "Rose," his voice cut through the elegant dinner conversation like a knife. "We need to talk." Every head turned. Frederick's associates went quiet, assessing the threat with a kind of calm that suggested they were familiar with violence. I set down the serving dish I'd been holding, hands shaking. "You need to leave. You think you're too good for me now?" He was crossing the room, weaving slightly, and I backed up until I hit the bar. "With your mafia boyfriend? You're sleeping with a criminal, Rose. A murderer." His hand closed around my arm, too tight, bruising, familiar in the worst way, and I froze. Frederick's security materialized immediately, 2 men in suits moving to intercept, but Stefan was drunk and reckless and loud. "I know about the Cattaneos. Everyone here knows what they are. You're whoring yourself out to—" He didn't get to finish. Frederick appeared from the private dining room like a storm rolling in, and the temperature in the space dropped 20 degrees. He moved with predatory grace, security parting for him automatically, and his eyes were locked on Stefan's hand on my arm. Those weren't the eyes of the man who held me while I cried. This was the mafia boss, the enforcer, the man who'd had Stefan beaten for approaching me in a restaurant. This was the hunter, and Stefan was prey. "Remove your hand," Frederick said, too quiet, too calm. "Stefan, emboldened by alcohol and stupidity, or what? You'll kill me." "Everyone here knows what you are." Frederick moved. One swift motion, clinical precision, and Stefan's wrist bent at an angle that was very, very wrong. The crack was audible across the room. Stefan screamed, collapsing, and Frederick stepped over him like he was debris on the sidewalk. "Call the police," Frederick said to his security, not even looking at Stefan writhing on the floor. Assault, trespassing, restraining order violation. "I want charges filed before he makes it to the hospital." Then he turned to me, and the predator's eyes softened, and his hand came up to cup my face with gentleness that shouldn't have been possible seconds after breaking someone's wrist. "Did he hurt you?" I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. "No. You got here in time." He pulled me against his chest, and I felt his heart pounding, felt the adrenaline still coursing through him, felt the barely controlled violence radiating from every muscle. Then he kissed my forehead, and he didn't care that we were in a room full of his business associates, didn't care that they were all watching, didn't care about anything except making sure I was okay. "You're mine," he murmured against my hair, just loud enough for me to hear. "No one touches what's mine." Police arrived within minutes, suspiciously fast, which suggested Frederick had people everywhere, and arrested Stefan, who was still screaming threats between sobs of pain. The guests were fascinated, horrified, entertained. Frederick commanded the room with a single look. "Show's over. Dinner continues in 10 minutes. Rose's menu is exceptional, and I won't have her work wasted because of one drunk fool." Then he pulled me aside away from the crowd, his hands on my shoulders. "You're coming home with me. Not the penthouse, my home. The estate." "Frederick, I can't." "That's not a request, Tesoro." His voice was firm, unyielding. "He knows where you've been staying. You're not safe there anymore, but Damon is away on business until tomorrow. You'll stay in the guest room if that makes you feel better, but you're not going back to that penthouse tonight." He stroked my arms, grounding me. "Please. For my peace of mind." I was exhausted, terrified, done fighting. Okay. I woke up in an unfamiliar bed in an unfamiliar room, and for a moment panic seized me before I remembered. Frederick's estate, the guest bedroom, Stefan in handcuffs. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and I could hear sounds from somewhere in the house, music, maybe, or voices on TV. I ventured downstairs in the pajamas Frederick had given me, his pajamas, soft cotton that smelled like him, and followed the sounds to the kitchen. Frederick was there, standing at the stove with a spatula, scowling at a pan of eggs like they'd personally offended him. "You can run an empire but can't scramble eggs," I said from the doorway. He looked up, and his scowl transformed into a smile. "I have people for this usually, but you were sleeping, and I wanted to do something nice." "That's sweet." I crossed to the stove, took the spatula from his hand. Also futile. "These are beyond saving. They're eggs." "How hard can it be?" "Apparently very hard for you." I dumped the rubbery mess into the trash and started over. "Go sit. I'll cook." He leaned against the counter instead, watching me move around his kitchen with proprietary satisfaction. I could get used to this, having someone cook for you, having you in my home, in my life, in my space. His eyes tracked my movements. You fit here, Rose. I did fit. That was the terrifying part. This massive estate with its old money and family history should have felt intimidating, but instead it felt like coming home. We ate breakfast at the kitchen island, proper scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, and talked about nothing important. His favorite books, my dream restaurant concept, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. After, he pulled me into the living room, sat on the couch, and tugged me into his lap despite my half-hearted protests. "Let me hold you," he said. "After last night, I need to—" I settled against him, my head on his chest, his arms around my waist, and we stayed like that while morning light painted patterns on the hardwood floor. "When you open your restaurant," he said suddenly, "I'm investing—" I tilted my head back to look at him. "I can't let you do that. You can't stop me. Silent partner. Your name, your vision, your menu, my money." His hand stroked my side. "Don't argue. That's too much. Nothing is too much for you." He said it with such certainty, such absolute conviction that I almost believed him. "Federico," I whispered. "Bellissima." He kissed my hair. The front door opened. We both froze. Footsteps in the hallway. Familiar footsteps. "Dad? You home?" Damon. He appeared in the living room doorway and stopped dead. Took in the scene, me in Frederick's lap, his hand in my hair, my hand on his chest, our foreheads touching in intimate comfort. Complete devastation washed across his face. "What the fuck?" I scrambled off Frederick's lap, guilty panic flooding every nerve. "Damon, you're home early." "How long?" His voice was shaking. "And don't lie to me." Frederick stood calm and controlled. 8 days. Since the locked study, 8 days, and neither of you told me? Damon's hands were fists at his sides. "I tried," I said desperately. "Yesterday at coffee. You walked out before I could, because you said there was something between you. Not that you were together. Not that you were—" He gestured wildly at us, at the domestic scene he'd walked into. "Not that you were playing house in our home." "We're together, Damon," Frederick said. Officially. The confirmation seemed to break something in Damon. "You knew, at the restaurant when Stefan showed up, at the gala. You knew how I felt about her. I did, and you pursued her anyway. Yes. No guilt? No remorse?" Frederick's jaw tightened. "Guilt, yes. Every day. Remorse for having her? No. I love her, Damon." The words hung in the air like a bomb. First time he'd said it out loud. First time I'd heard it, and Damon had to hear it before I did. "I love him too," I said, tears streaming down my face, because if we were destroying everything, at least it would be honest. Damon's laugh was broken, jagged. "I waited for you for 2 years, Rose. 2 years. I watched Stefan hurt you. I held you through panic attacks. I took you to the hospital when he threw that glass at your head. I supported you through therapy, through nightmares, through everything. And the first man you fall for after him is my father? It wasn't about choosing between you, no, because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what it was." His voice was raw, cracking. "You said you weren't ready for a relationship. You said you needed time to heal, but apparently you just needed time to find someone who wasn't me. That's not fair. None of this is fair." He turned to Frederick. "You raised me to be honorable, to protect family, to put others first. And then you do this? You're right." Frederick's voice was steady despite the pain in his eyes. "I'm a hypocrite. I taught you principles I couldn't follow myself. Then make it right. End this." "No." "Just like that? No. I won't lie to you. I won't manipulate you. But I won't leave her either." Frederick moved closer to me, a united front. "I love her, Figlio. More than I've loved anyone since your mother." Damon flinched. "Don't bring Mama into this. She'd understand. She'd want me to be happy again, not with Rose, anyone but Rose." I stepped forward, desperate. "Damon, you're my best friend, my family. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. You both did. I know, and I'm so sorry, but I can't change how I feel." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Did you ever love me? Even a little?" The question was a knife. Not romantically, never romantically. And I'm sorry for that. "At least you're honest." He turned back to Frederick. "You've made your choice. Yes. Then I guess I have to make mine. The finality in his voice made my chest ache. Damon, what does that mean? It means I can't be around you two. Not right now. Maybe not ever. Damon, Frederick started. You chose her over me, Papa. Live with that. I didn't choose her over you. I chose her for me, Frederick's voice cracked. You're my son. I love you. That doesn't change. Same result, though, ISN it. Damon headed for the door. Damon, wait, please. I followed him, desperate, crying. He turned at the door. What, Rose? What could you possibly say right now? That I love you. That you're my person. That losing you is killing me. Then you should have thought about that before you fell for my father. His eyes were hard, hurt, closed off. Goodbye, Rose. He walked out. The door closed. The silence left behind was devastating. I collapsed, legs giving out, and Frederick caught me, held me while I sobbed into his chest. I've lost him, I gasped between sobs. My best friend. He's gone. I know, Tesoro. I know. Frederick's voice was thick with his own grief. We should end this. We should fix this before it's too late. No. His arms tightened around me. We don't get to hurt him and then make it meaningless by ending this. We owe him the respect of this being real, being worth it. But he's your son, and he's hurt and angry, and he has every right to be. But Rose, I won't apologize for loving you. He tilted my face up, and I saw tears in his eyes, too. Even if it costs me my relationship with him. Even then? Even then. Because if I give you up now, I lose you both. At least this way I have you. We stood there in his foyer, holding each other, both of us breaking, and I realized this was what choosing each other looked like. Messy, painful, honest, and absolutely worth it. The first week after Damon walked out was hell. Frederick threw himself into work with an intensity that bordered on dangerous, coming home at midnight smelling like cigars and expensive scotch, falling into bed beside me without speaking. I'd wake up to find him already gone. A note on the pillow, working late. Don't wait up. I love you. I opened my catering business officially, booked 3 events in 1 week, and cried myself to sleep every night. We were together, but we were both bleeding. On day 8, I found Frederick in his study at 2 a.m., staring at a photo of Damon as a child. He was 6 here, Frederick said, without looking up. First day of school, terrified, made me promise I'd never leave him. I sat beside him on the leather couch. You didn't leave him, didn't I? He asked me to choose him. I chose you instead. You chose both. He's the one who made it an ultimatum. Frederick set the photo down, pulled me into his lap. Doesn't make it hurt less. We sat like that in the dark, 2 people who'd chosen each other and were paying the price, and I wondered if love was supposed to hurt this much. Week 2, Frederick's phone rang during dinner. Damon. Frederick stared at the screen like it might explode. Answer it, I urged. What if he... Answer it, Federico. He did, on the last ring. Damon. I couldn't hear Damon's response, but I watched Frederick's face transform. Shock, then hope, then cautious relief. Yes. Of course. When? Thursday works. Just us? Okay, I'll be there. He hung up and looked at me with wet eyes. He wants to meet for lunch. Just him and me. That's good. That's really good. He sounded... Frederick searched for the word. Tired. Hurt. But willing. I kissed him, tasted salt from tears. I didn't know he was crying. Go. Talk to him. Be honest. I'm terrified of making it worse. You can't make it worse. You can only try to make it better. Thursday afternoon, I stress-baked 6 dozen cookies while Frederick was at lunch with Damon. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Frederick. How did it go? I answered immediately. He's processing. It's not forgiveness yet, but it's not complete rejection either. Frederick sounded exhausted. He asked if I was happy with you. What did you say? I told him yes. Happier than I've been in 8 years. He was quiet for a moment. He said he's trying to accept that it's hard, but he's trying. Relief made my knees weak. Did you apologize? He told me not to. Said I chose what I wanted, and at least I was honest about it. Frederick laughed, bitter and proud. My son is stronger than I am, Rose. He's handling this with more grace than I deserve. He loves you. He's hurt, but he loves you. I know. I just hope it's enough. The first family dinner happened in week 10, and I'd never been more nervous in my life. I cooked at Frederick's estate. Italian-Asian fusion, my specialty, enough food to feed an army because cooking was how I processed anxiety. Frederick set the table with his good china, his hands shaking slightly, and I realized he was just as terrified as I was. Damon arrived at 7 p.m. exactly, dressed in a button-down and jeans, holding a bottle of wine. "I brought wine," he said stiffly. "I didn't know what you were making, so I got red and white. Both are perfect." "Thank you." I took the bottles with trembling hands. "Come in." Dinner was awkward at first. Careful conversation, topics chosen for safety, all of us performing civility. But halfway through the main course, Frederick told a story about a business deal gone wrong, and I made a comment about his terrible negotiation tactics. And Frederick laughed, really laughed, unguarded and genuine. I caught Damon watching us with something complicated in his expression. After dinner, while Frederick was getting dessert, Damon helped me clear plates. "He's different with you," Damon said quietly. "Lighter. I haven't seen him like this since Mama died. Is that okay? It's painful, but it's also good. He deserves to be happy again." Damon set the plates in the sink. "I'm not there yet, Rose. I'm not okay with this. But I'm trying. That's all I can ask for. You love him?" "Yes." "And he loves you?" "Yes." Damon nodded slowly. "Then I guess I have to find a way to live with it, because walking away means losing both of you, and I can't do that either." By week 12, I had my first restaurant consultation lined up. A small space in the North End, perfect location, reasonable rent, everything I'd dreamed about. Frederick insisted on coming with me, standing in the empty space with his hands in his pockets already calculating renovations and equipment costs. "Don't," I warned. "Don't what?" "Whatever you're planning. Don't buy the building or pay off the landlord or whatever mafia thing you're thinking." He smiled innocently. "I don't know what you're talking about, Federico. Fine. But I'm investing. Silent partner, like I promised. I can get a business loan. Rose." He pulled me against him in the empty restaurant. "Let me do this. Let me be part of your dream." I agreed because arguing with Frederick when he'd decided something was pointless, and because I secretly loved that he wanted to be part of this. My restaurant's soft opening happened on a cold February night, 6 months after the gala where everything started. The space was small but perfect, exposed brick, warm lighting, an open kitchen where guests could watch me cook. 20 seats, invitation only, a test run for friends and family before the official opening. Frederick was there, obviously, sitting at the best table with his hair down and reading glasses on, watching me work with proud intensity. His business associates filled half the restaurant, my catering clients the other half. But one seat remained conspicuously empty. I'd texted Damon the invitation 3 times. He'd never responded. I was plating the 3rd course when the door opened. Damon. He was dressed nicely, holding flowers, looking nervous and determined in equal measure. I nearly dropped the plate. He crossed to me, and for a moment we just stared at each other. 6 months of hurt and healing between us. "I couldn't miss this," he said. "It's your dream." I set the plate down and hugged him, the first physical contact since the confrontation. He was stiff at first, then his arms came around me, and it felt like coming home. "Thank you," I whispered against his shoulder. "Thank you for being here." "I'm trying," he said. "For both of you." He sat at that empty seat, the one I'd left hoping, and when I served his course, he ate every bite and smiled at me like, maybe, eventually, we'd find our way back. 6 months later, Frederick reserved my restaurant after closing. Private dinner, just the 2 of us, and when I asked what the occasion was, he just smiled mysteriously and said I'd see. When I arrived, the restaurant was lit with candles, and Frederick was in the kitchen wearing an apron and scowling at a pot of risotto like it had personally offended him. "What are you doing?" I laughed. "Cooking. Attempting to cook. Failing at cooking," he gestured helplessly at the disaster. "I wanted to do this myself. No staff, no help. Just me. Federico, the risotto is burning, I know." I rescued the risotto, barely, while Frederick plated the chicken he'd overcooked and the vegetables he'd underseasoned. And when we sat down to eat, I couldn't stop laughing. "You run an empire but can't cook pasta?" In my defense, running an empire doesn't require precise timing and constant stirring. He was smiling despite the failure. "But I wanted tonight to be special." "Why? What's happening tonight?" He stood, and I noticed his hands were shaking. Frederick Cattaneo, who'd broken a man's wrist without flinching, who commanded rooms full of dangerous men, who'd chosen me over his son without hesitation. He was nervous. Rose Chen, he began, and his voice was unsteady. 8 months ago, you sent me a text by accident. Best accident of my life, Federico. I realized what was happening. He got on one knee, pulled a small box from his pocket, and looked up at me with those dark eyes that saw everything. You brought me back to life. Made me remember what joy feels like, what hope feels like, what being alive feels like. I know we hurt people to be together. I know it's been complicated and messy and wrong in 100 ways. He opened the box, and inside was a ring, delicate rose design with diamonds catching the candlelight. But I love you more than I've loved anything except my son. You're not temporary, not a phase, not a rebound from grief. You're my future, Rose, and I need you to know that before I ask, will you marry me? I was crying, nodding before I could form words. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring on my finger. Rose gold band, delicate petals of diamonds curling around the center stone, and, for a second, all I could do was stare at it. At what it meant. At everything we'd burned down to get here. Perfect, he murmured, brushing his thumb over the ring where it sat against my skin. Looks like it was always meant to be there. He stood and kissed me, deep, hungry, reverent. This wasn't a claiming born of desperation or fear. This was slow and sure and certain, that kind of kiss that said we'd already chosen each other 100 times before this moment and would keep choosing each other after. We did it, I whispered against his mouth when we finally broke apart. Through Stefan, through Damon, through all of it. We did, he said, resting his forehead against mine, his hands warm on my waist. No more secrets, no more hiding, just us. I laughed through the tears, a choked, disbelieving sound. I'm going to be your wife. My wife, he repeated, tasting the word like expensive wine. Mrs. Rose Cattaneo. The woman every man in this city will know is untouchable. Federico, mine, he said simply, in every way that matters. He kissed me again, softer this time, almost giddy, like the weight he'd carried for years had finally loosened, and for a few blissful seconds, it was just us in my restaurant, candles and bad risotto, and the future opening like a door. The door opened. We broke apart, and I spun around in panic to see Damon standing in the doorway. He asked my permission yesterday, Damon said, closing the door behind him. I looked between them. You knew? He asked me yesterday at lunch. Asked if I'd object to him proposing. Damon approached slowly. I said you were never mine to give. But if you're going to be part of this family officially, I'd rather be part of it too than stand outside alone. I ran to him, threw my arms around him, and this time there was no stiffness, no hesitation, just my best friend hugging me back. Congratulations, Rose, he whispered. Be happy, you both deserve it. Frederick joined us, and the three of us stood there in my restaurant, complicated and messy and healing, and I realized family wasn't about being perfect. It was about choosing each other despite the mess. 1 year later, Sunday dinners had become tradition. Every week, without fail, Damon came to the estate for dinner. Frederick cooked, badly, but with enthusiasm, and I supervised while we talked about the restaurant, about business, about life. This Sunday, Damon was early. I brought someone, he called from the foyer. Frederick and I exchanged glances. This was new. A woman appeared behind Damon, petite, dark hair, nervous smile. This is Sophia, Damon said. Sophia, this is my father, Frederick, and my friend Rose. The hesitation before friend was deliberate teasing, and I threw a dish towel at him. I'm his former best friend who married his father and ruined his life, I said, extending my hand to Sophia. Nice to meet you. Sophia laughed, surprised. He said you'd be honest. I'm Sophia Martinez. And you didn't ruin his life. He talks about you both constantly. All good things, I hope? Frederick asked. Mostly, Sophia said diplomatically. We ate on the terrace because the weather was perfect. Warm spring evening, the city spread out below us like scattered jewels. Frederick's Italian-Asian fusion that I'd taught him to make. Wine from his cellar, conversation that flowed easily. Sophia fits seamlessly, laughing at Frederick's terrible jokes, asking about the restaurant with genuine interest, teasing Damon with the kind of comfort that suggested this wasn't new. How long have you two been together? I asked during dessert. 3 months, Damon said, his hand finding Sophia's. Met at a conference. She didn't know who my family was, which was refreshing. I Googled him later, Sophia admitted. Your father literally runs the mafia. Frederick raised his wine glass, allegedly, laughter around the table, and I caught Damon's eye across the plates and candles. He smiled at me, genuine, warm, healed, and I smiled back. We'd made it through the fire and come out changed but whole. After dinner, Frederick and I stood on the terrace while Damon and Sophia did dishes inside, Sophia insisting because Rose cooked, so I clean. We made it, I said, leaning into Frederick's side. Through everything. Never doubted we would, he said. Liar, you worried constantly about Damon. Fine, but I never doubted us. He turned me to face him, hands framing my face. Any regrets, Tesoro? I looked at my ring, the rose design he'd chosen because he said I brought beauty to his thorny life. Looked through the windows at Damon laughing with Sophia, at the family we'd rebuilt from wreckage. Looked at Frederick with his hair down and reading glasses hanging from his collar and love in his eyes. Not a single one, I said. You? Only that I didn't meet you sooner. He kissed me as the sun set over Boston, and inside I heard Damon's laugh, free and genuine and healed, mixing with Sophia's, with music someone had turned on, with the sounds of family being imperfect and messy and absolutely real. I'd sent a text to the wrong number 8 months ago. Best accident of my life. The end. Okay, be honest with me in the comments. If you were Rose, would you have chosen the safe love with your best friend, or the dangerous love with his father? Do you think what they did to Damon was unforgivable, or is all fair in love and war? If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It helps so much. And if you want more dark romance stories like this one, subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you never miss new intriguing stories every day. Have a sweet little life.